Doing here.
Okay, my name is Eli Dugan, or my Norwegian name is actually Owling, which means little Earl, like a duck and a duckling, so that's my Norwegian name. I live in Norway, but I'm now back on the block where I grew up in Sunset Park, and on 49th Street. I grew up between 5th and 6th Avenue, and we're now on the corner, so I'm really, I have a lot of strange feelings about it, because I've got lots of great memories from here. So I hope that I actually get to see the exact place where we lived. Yes, and I remember when they actually planted these trees. That happened back when I was a kid. There was a big campaign to plant them. But then I was back, 5-6 years ago, and the trees were burnt. There were sneakers hanging from the trees. And so it looks very different. It's kind of, it brings back, I start thinking about, specific events that happened. And, we used to sit out on the stoop. And it's funny because there is no Norwegian word for stoop, so we called it stupen. And stupen actually means something in Norwegian. It means a cliff. So it wasn't as, so that didn't really make sense. At that time, well, what was happening was there were quite a few Norwegians who lived in the apartments. There's 8 apartments in each building. Out of those, 5 of the families were Norwegian at the time. And then what happened is that, the Puerto Ricans were moving in and the Norwegians moved out. I think one of the problems was that Norwegians stayed to themselves. And then the Puerto Ricans came, and all of a sudden there were speakers out on the stoop, they were dancing in the streets, and that was not quite Norwegian style. So what was happening was that the Norwegians moved out, further out towards Bay Ridge. But the Norwegians had been moving since the beginning of the 1900s from Red Hook. And the reason the Norwegians moved down here, up here, however you look at it, is the fact that they built the subway. So the subway made this a lot more accessible. So back in the end of the 1800s, the big Norwegian community was Red Hook. At the time, I think about 40% of the people living in Red Hook were Norwegian.
Block.
Yeah, it's dried. It is the old block. And I mean, the block hasn't really changed. The buildings here, because when I lived here, this whole health center, that was a brand new building at the time. Well, that was 1959. So I always wonder what used to be here, because if you go on the next block over, you find too that there's newer buildings that were built, in the beginning of the 60s. And I actually did this walking tour of Sunset Park, and she told me that there used to be houses over there, and her grandparents used to live in that house. So there's a lot of Norwegians who also come back, either their parents or their grandparents lived here. And so there's a lot of connections with Sunset Park. And we also had Norwegian stores at the time, so it was like the last of the stores. But the interesting thing is that when it came to, my mom's butcher is still the new public meat market. And what they would do is that my mom would make these Norwegian patties. Well, when you do those, you grind them several times. And she got them to grind them several times for her. And it was not, it was not a Norwegian butcher. They also had, so that they also had a lamb. The national dish of Norway is called fårikål, which is lamb and cabbage. They're still there, so I don't know if it's the same owners. It's called the New Public Meat Market, and I think it's been there since the 1940s. It's one of the places that is still actually there. And at the time, they had, Norwegian signs, meat for fårikål, it said. Okay, so the house is right across the street now here. So what's changed is that they have a new door. That's, I guess, basically the change. They put in new windows too. And that's about it. I don't know, what do they have?
How are you feeling?
I said I'm really happy that these people were so kind that they let us in, and it's like, it has been a dream. I've always thought about, I'd love to be able to go back, and I've never seen that I have the opportunity to do it. And so when you said yesterday, it's like, okay, let's do it. It's like, okay, I'm not about the one to knock on a door, but So I'm glad I have somebody who's going to take me there, and that we have a yes, and we're going back now to see it.
Let's go.
Thank you. Thank you. Hi. Hi. What's your name? My name is Eli. Hi. So.
You go to the kitchen?
Yes. Can we go?
Oh, this is the kitchen.
Oh, you have the kitchen here.
Oh. Princess.
Hi. 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 See this because this was our living room.
Oh yeah, what's the living room?
This was the living room, and that was the kitchen here.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Abby.
Ah,
Oh.
so that's interesting. Ah, hi. Hi. I said.
Like that, and have people come in and
Yeah, because you have the air conditioning
Exactly.
here. Because you know what, we lived here. This was actually the kitchen here.
oh okay.
And so what my dad did was he built like a ladder.
Oh
So we actually
really?
played in the backyard.
Oh really?
Yes, because that was a great place to play. It was nice and quiet. And you know, there were also, let me see if I can get any kind of
Yeah,
picture.
sure. Yeah, it's a little
Yeah.
sorry.
So, but no, so,
So this used to be a kitchen.
yeah, so the kitchen
Oh, it
was
was?
here, yes.
Oh really? Oh I didn't know.
So,
that.
and what you have as a kitchen now was the living room.
Oh okay.
And back then, so here we had there was the stove, and it was all the kitchen cabinets on this side, and then the bathroom was here. And like I said, and we just opened the window and went out, and our neighbors, they did the same thing, so the two of us played together outside.
Oh okay. I didn't.
So both neighbors, we both had, so we as kids could go out there.
Oh, you see, I didn't know that.
So
And how long have you been living here in this apartment?
Just 5 years. Not
Good
very long.
making good memories?
Yeah.
Good. The bathroom's still here, Eli.
yes, I said, can I take a picture with you guys?
Thank you.
I'm very happy that you'd let me in. It's like I always had a dream of it'd be so fun to go back and see, hey, this is
Yeah.
where, because we moved in here when we came from Norway. So I was 5 years old when we came from Norway and moved into the apartment here.
Oh okay, really? Oh wow.
So yeah, so that was it was a big deal, because it was the first time, in Norway we had no TV. We bought the apartment here and there was a TV set. I got to watch TV. I was glued to the TV watching it. So, yeah, so I came when I was 5 years old from Norway. And I could say 5 words, and the words were yes, no, and don't touch it.
Yeah.
So those were the 5 words I knew. And it was funny because here there was linoleum. And my dad took away the linoleum. And there was a whole newspaper under the linoleum. So when they had put that down, they had forgotten a whole newspaper underneath it. So, and with the windows here, my mom would stand out on the ledge to clean the windows on the outside. She would hang it out there. So,
Yeah, this is the restroom, the bathroom, and you can take a picture from the window outside. Here it was clear.
oh yeah, that's a good idea. Because this was where the bathroom was. Yeah, that's.
¿Y usted eres de México?
Sí, yo soy de México, de la ciudad de Puebla.
This was the living room. So we had the sofa over here, and then we had the most important thing we had here. You know what that was? The TV set. Because when we came from Norway in 1959, Norway did not have TV until 1960. But this is what I said. My mother, she would stand outside here to clean. So she would stand there because she had to have clean windows. And then she would hold on to the window and clean the window. Because it had to be clean. I said, "You're crazy. You're crazy. Ah, no, 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 no. It has to be clean." So, and this I said is where this faces out, so you hear a lot of noise from here. So we had neighbors. The man who was the superintendent here, he lived on the 3rd floor. They were Norwegians,
Oh, as well.
and but he would never come directly home from work
Oh, I see.
because down on the corner here there was a bar.
Oh, really?
Yes, where there's now like a vegetable fruit market.
Oh, okay. Okay.
That was a bar, and he would always stop there when he came home from work. And so after work, then he would come home, and his wife would be really mad at him. So we would hear it here inside here. Hjälp, hjälp, hun dräber mig, help, help, she's killing me, because his wife was so mad at him. And we could all hear it because of the sound in here. They were Italians, and he was learning to play the trumpet.
Oh.
Not a good thing.
Yeah.
You can imagine hearing all the trumpet music. He was
I
practicing and practicing. So, and I found out, I think that in the summertime you have like 1/2 hour of sun that comes in here when the sun is way
Yeah,
up
because
here.
a lot of sunlight does not actually come out over
No,
here very much.
You have like I think just like a 1/2 hour or so.
Yeah.
But it was a big thing because back then we moved in after somebody else went back to Norway.
Oh, okay.
So very often it was like you moved in when somebody, a relative or a friend moved out. So this was, but I had to, the 1 bedroom here.
Yeah.
There was only 2 bedrooms.
Oh, okay.
And there was the bedroom in the front.
We ended up closing it. We never opened it.
Well, my sister had that room, so she was very happy because then she could sneak
Just
out without
yeah.
my parents knowing that she was
Yeah, that's
sneaking
actually
out.
a good idea.
Yeah, but then there was the other bedroom. I shared that where my parents had the bed on this side, so I had to sleep in the same bedroom as my parents.
Oh.
So it was a nice place to live. Like I said the people. You asked about immigrant groups. The biggest group of immigrants at that time were Italians,
Oh, yeah.
and so sometimes we had fights on the street. Like.
There's a lot here.
It was Italians, Norwegian, because the people lived here was Norwegian, and there was one time where there was somebody, he made so much fun of me because I was Norwegian, and I was very shy, but one time I got so mad at him, I took him, pushed him on the ground and held him down.
Oh, wow.
And so, but then the interesting thing is that I later on, when I went to junior high school, we ended up in the same class, and he comes to me and says, I have something to confess. Do you know when I was teasing you because you were Norwegian? I am actually Norwegian.
Wow.
So he would never tell anyone he was Norwegian, but then when we got to junior high school, he did tell me. So
I was asking you about how it feels when you hear people speaking poorly of immigrants, and you were saying.
Yeah, so it feels kind of very horrid. I feel very horrid about it because I'm not an immigrant, but my parents are. So it does really hurt me sometimes because I know that my parents are going through the exact same thing. They feel the same way. Some people that are able to speak up about it, and unfortunately my parents, we even sometimes have problems with a neighbor. We've had problems with the neighbor before. She would be on the other side, and she would really talk bad about my family. She'd say that we're so loud and this and that, and I didn't really like that. So at one point I got upset, and they called my father outside saying that we're just very loud and obnoxious, and I didn't like it. So I confronted them myself because they were talking back towards my father, towards us, and I didn't like it. So I defended my father, and I told her, you have to stop. Like, you're no one to tell us anything. You're no one to tell us, oh, we can't put music this loud. We can't do this. We can't do that. Like, we're terrible people. It's like you can't say things like that and not really know us.
That's right.
But you know, one thing I found interesting was, you know, we were the immigrants. My best friend, his parents came from Norway, so he was not an immigrant. And he was like, they asked him, oh, are you Norwegian? I'm of Norwegian descent. He had blonde hair, blue eyes. He looked a lot more Norwegian than I ever had. And he was American, which meant he would not eat, when he came to our house, he would not eat our food because we ate traditional Norwegian food. Because at their house, they had sandwiches, you know, they had the square bread.
Yeah.
And they cut it diagonally.
Oh, okay.
Because that was real American. And they had like ham and cheese, so that was for them the right kind of food. So he would not eat traditional Norwegian food. So they were Americans. We were the immigrants. So there was also a separation there, what happened when in the next generation came. Because, for example, now he's very proud to be Norwegian. When he got older,
yeah, like for me, I still eat a lot of American food. I'm a little more used to it. But of course, I eat Mexican food as well. Because, you know, at first when I was younger, I used to always be a little embarrassed about it too. But, you know, afterwards, I was like, you know, there's nothing to be ashamed of, you know. You come from this family, embrace it. And just, you know, you'll have to live with it forever. So just embrace it instead of trying to be ashamed of it.
right. And there's a lot of good Mexican food.
Yes,
And
yes, and people, yes.
Hola, princesa. Hola, princesa.
Listo.
¿Pueden leer algo ustedes?
Está bien.
So this is what I said. My parents' bed was on this side,
Yeah.
and so my bed was over here. So I slept just like that with the pillow.
Oh, just like that. Oh, okay.
And I had a stuffed dog that I slept with there, and so I had to sleep in the same. And then we just had like a closet between here.
Oh, okay, okay.
So, and no TV in the bedroom.
No TV. I'll leave that. TV does not really turn on very often.
So no, so this was the bedroom, and my sister, she was 9 years older than me, so that's why she got her own room.
Oh, okay.
But we also did use, I showed him, my first birthday party when I was 6 years old was in this room here.
Oh, wow, okay.
So we set it up so there was a table in the middle, like this, and we sat around the table. Because, I mean, this is the sunny room.
Yeah.
And that's what I
No, I actually, when we first moved in, I didn't want this bedroom just because whenever I was on my phone, I didn't get much Wi-Fi. But I actually kind of like it. And I'm a little jealous about it because a lot of sunlight does come in.
Yes,
so,
yeah.
And it's just very nice to just wake up and just see the world out there instead of just always waking up and seeing nothing.
Yeah, no, that's true. So I was jealous of my sister, and like I said, she could sneak out through the door there. So, and the people next door, they had a son who was my age, and then they had a daughter that was my sister's age.
Oh, okay.
So we got to know them really well because they were also the Norwegians. So.
Oh, okay, yeah. Because some Chinese people actually live on the other side. We don't really know them very well, but, you know, they seem like very nice people. Right. They never complain to us. They've always been nice to us ever since. Because they have children too, so.
What about the rest of the apartments? What kind of people live in the apartments?
I think upstairs it's another Mexican family. I'm not too sure. And then maybe like a Puerto Rican family more upstairs.
Right, right.
And yeah. And then a lot of these streets live a lot of Puerto Ricans.
Right, yeah. Because, you know, when the Norwegians moved out, the Puerto Ricans were moving in.
Oh, wow, okay.
So that was like in the 1960s, that's when the neighborhood was changing it, because there had been a lot of Norwegians. Yeah. But see, Norwegians also, some of them go back to Norway. Like my dad, they were 9 brothers and sisters, and 7 of them came to Sunset Park.
Oh, okay.
And they all went back to retire in Norway.
Oh.
So I live in Norway. So yes.
Okay.
So, but almost all my cousins were born here. They were born out of, Sister Elizabeth. No, there was. Do you know where the library, the one they tore down now? I don't know if you know where.
No,
And that was founded by.
Because now there's another hospital. Maimonides.
Maimonides.
Right. Yeah, that's also an old hospital. But the hospital that one down on 4th Avenue was started as a Norwegian hospital. And the reason they started that was when Norwegians came in the 1800s, they came as immigrants, and they would not help them because they were immigrants. So they started their own health system so that they could get help, since no one else would help them as immigrants.
Oh wow! The stories I see now, it's like from what you're telling me, were something very different, and I'm just like, oh really? They actually should have had that still here. Now it's probably like a different store or something, instead of it being a library, a women's shelter.
Yeah, no. So it's strange to see how things have really changed.
Yeah.
I've always said it would be interesting if the walls could talk and tell you the history of the building.
Course, yes. Because there's drastic changes as well. Even where I used to live, sometimes even right now, sometimes I wish to just go back, go see around my city and my old neighborhood, and see how much have things changed throughout the years.
Because I remember the first time I came back to 8th Avenue, and it had turned almost all Chinese.
Yes.
Tears started running in my eyes. It's kind of like your whole history is gone. It's like all the things you remember. It's like the only people that know that are people your own age. It's
exactly.
It's
like you recall the history, but at the same time, when you go and see it, did I really live there? Was I actually from there?
Yeah, no, it's true. It's kind of like it's. I mean, even being in here now is it's really unreal in a way.
Talk about that.
It's because, well, like you said, it's like, did I really live here? Then I start thinking about me, being in bed, like I remember when I was, and then, in the living room when I was on the sofa, I was sick.
Oh.
And of course, back then the doctor came. He actually came to visit.
Oh wow! Really?
And so I can remember the episode, and I also remember, for example, that we were not allowed to use regular playing cards.
Oh wow!
Because they were sin, right? So that's a religious thing. So, and I remember the time before my mom came, she was coming in the door, so the only thing I could do was dump it behind the sofa, hoping that she wasn't going to find the cards, that they were behind there. So I could sneak and find them later on. It came from a very religious area. So I was not allowed to go to the movies, for example, and I was not allowed to dance.
Oh, wow.
So in school, I actually had a piece of paper that said from the pastor that I couldn't even do folk dancing in school. So I had to sit and watch.
Oh, wow.
So that was because of religious reasons. So that's one of the problems when you come as an immigrant. You bring these rules with you.
Yes.
Well, my parents kept to the rules, but for me it wasn't. I couldn't even go to the prom.
Wow.
I couldn't go to high school prom because it was not allowed.
Yeah, sometimes I have religious things in my life as well, but sometimes I feel like you have to sometimes step out of those boundaries and just sometimes take a risk in life,
Like what? Like what?
What? I mean, usually I wasn't that kid who would sneak out, but I sometimes wouldn't come home on curfew. So, my parents would get a little upset about it and everything. It's not really religious. It's just something that they always had turned on me for. But at first, when I was younger, I didn't really understand why. Of course, I knew it was for my safety. And, but I just learned, I was like, if I wouldn't, and then of course, we've all done mistakes in life. I've done a few mistakes in my life.
You're so young. What life? What are you talking about?
But I mean, I learned from these things, So.
Yeah, sometimes you have to learn from your own mistakes. You can't learn from other people's mistakes.
Exactly.
I think that's the problem parents have too.
Exactly, for sure.
But no, it's and like I said, it's interesting because my parents went back to Norway to retire, And my parents always said the best years they had were the years they lived in Brooklyn.
Wow.
And I'm going, wow, that is wow. It's because there was a community feel, you know, where they had close friends. My mother was like in a ladies' aid group, and there were like all my aunt and uncles and all my cousins, lots of family. And people here, maybe more so than when they were in Norway, took care of each other.
Oh, okay.
Because they kind of felt some kind of a obligation to take care of each other, you know, when you're in a foreign country, and so that's that. They were their best years of their marriage.
Oh, wow.
Did your family receive help when you got here from any family members or other Mexicans?
Yes, actually, we have family right on 48th Street, and when we came here, we didn't have much money because we had paid so much deposit and the rent in general, so that kind of took everything out of us. And so when we were gonna come over and live here, we really didn't have money for food at the moment. So my aunt, she made a huge grocery shopping, and she bring us food. She bring us a few pots and pans, and basically really helped us out in our time of need. And now they actually recently moved as well, so we've actually helped them as well in return. You know, as a favor, you helped us during our hard moment, so now we will help you. And so we're actually helping them with the process.
This is interesting. My dad came 4 years before we moved here. He was coming here, and he came here to make money. And so he lived with my aunt and uncle. So, you know, he didn't live in his own place. It was when his other brother came, they also lived in the same house. They lived on 56th Street between 4th and 5th. And they took care of each other when they came. And then after a while, then they found somewhere else to live. But there too, it was like, they came from Norway after World War II. Norway was a very poor country. That's why my father came, because he wasn't able to feed his family in Norway. And what do? Well, then you leave your family. And so then he sent money to Norway, and then he wanted my mother to come. And my mother didn't want to move, but they had a travel agent where he lived, and she filled out all the paperwork, and she told my mother, sign here. And she did, and she said, now you're going to America.
Wow.
So then we were together as a family. So I was living 4 years without my father around too, and which was very, very, a lot of families, it was like the father came over here alone.
Yeah.
The family stayed in Norway.
Because from what I was told, my father, she came alone at first. He lived in California a few months, or maybe even a year, and then he left. And then, of course, my parents knew they were going to have a child, so, of course, they didn't want, as much as they love their country, there wasn't much over there. There was barely any food for anybody. So what my parents did was a hard decision, was moving over here, especially with the border. It was very difficult, but they managed to get through it. It was hard, from what they have told me, that I think one or a few times immigration caught them, and but they were determined. They were like, you know, we can't, as much as we love our country, we can't have her living here in these conditions. We want to give her a nice place, give her food, give her a good life, and that's what they chose to do. They ended up having to just move over here, and it was a hard decision because they left their family. But with time, they started talking to them on the phone and seeing them. Now with, you know, more technology has come in, so they even see them through FaceTime and this and that. And just seeing that is enough for them to be like, oh, my family's doing well. And they can also send them money as well. So it was a hard decision, but they got through it as well.
¿Y nunca más regresan? ¿Aquí va a ser su futuro?
Pues sí, aquí queremos el futuro. Pues pues nos preocupamos por la familia de que estudien aquí.
Explica.
Lo que queremos es que nuestros hijos estudien aquí, porque aquí les da mucho estudio y les enseña muchos valores. Y además estamos aquí en un lugar donde uno puede progresar, donde uno puede salir adelante. y bien, no como pues por ejemplo en México que hay muchos problemas y la gente no sale adelante por lo regular, se va por el mal camino, entonces aquí agarran un buen camino en la escuela y pues eso es lo que queremos, que salgan adelante, ¿verdad?
Todo para su familia.
Sí, todo por la familia.
Yeah, so also another thing was that there also was no education. My parents, they both ended up leaving school very early. It was very hard because they also had to pay and they couldn't afford it because they didn't have just one child. They had many, and instead of having to go to school as much as they wanted to, they ended up having to work at a very early age, and it was very difficult, and they just didn't want that life for me. And that's why they also decided to just move over here and take a risk.
Faltaba trabajo.
Nunca he faltado al trabajo, gracias a Dios que me ha ayudado. Me ha ayudado en esa forma de que parece que no me enfermo, me agarra gripa, pero me tomo por ahí unas aspirinas o para el flu y ya igual, así no me agarró bastante como para caer en la cama, no. O sea, gracias a Dios he trabajado a diario, a diario.
Yes,
Gracias
because
a Dios.
every time he goes to work, he's never missed a day in his life. I think probably only like once. If I think he was just extremely sick, but even sometimes with sickness, he still tries his hardest not to miss it, because of course we have bills to pay, and he tries to give me everything he can in order for me to keep going to school. And since I am his only child, I've always seen him work. I've always seen my mom work. You know, both of them together. I've always seen them as hard workers, and of course, every time when I was, I think, around 16, I wanted to start working, but my parents at first didn't let me because they just wanted me to finish school. So I finished high school, and then at 17, I told them, I was like, I'm sorry, I don't care if you say no, that I can't keep going, that I can't work, but I'm gonna work to pay my own, to pay anything like bills, or at least help you guys out with at least a few dollars. It won't be thousands, but you know, I feel like with every little counts. And of course, pay my own stuff, as in school or my own Metro card, clothes. That way, you guys have to keep thinking, oh wow, okay, I gotta go buy her this, I gotta go buy her that. No, like you guys just worry about bills and on yourself, and then I'll just worry about my own stuff. And that's what I wanted to do. I didn't want to, you know, put so much pressure on them now that I'm going to college, saying, okay, now I have to get even more stuff. It's like, no, I'll just worry about my own self. You guys worry about your own problems, you know. I'll deal with my problems on my own. And of course, here and there, I just ask for a few dollars, but it's not like, you know, enough to be like, oh, wow, okay, why does she need this much money for it? Yes, of course.
You know,
Because he's like, you know, maybe she needs it for now, but of course, I try to pay him back as much as I can, or at least pay him in some way where he's like, okay, wow, that, like, this is something special.
It's similar, you know, because when they came, my mother, what most Norwegian women did was they had jobs cleaning other people's houses. So my mother worked for, you know, did cleaning jobs. And so she was so proud because the first year I went to college, she was proud that with the money she made cleaning, she paid for me.
Wow, okay.
So that was, you know, that was her big thing, you know. So then later on I got a loan, and the rest of when I went to college I paid myself. But that first year, says that all came from me, not from your
It's because
dad.
sometimes you see your parents work so hard. You're like, I just want to give something back to them. And sometimes I feel like the best thing is just, because my parents, like I said before, they never had an education. Now that I am going to college, that's all they want me to do. Like, just get an education, something that we were never able to get back home. And I also learned to also just be more independent with myself, you know, financial wise, and just
It's the same. My parents, they went to school for 7 years and that was it. And I know my dad's brother, he was in the military, in the army, and he was so proud. He says, I went to school for 7 years, now I have my high school diploma.
Oh wow.
So he was able to get his high school diploma when he was in the army.
That's great. I mean,
So it was the same issue. My parents really pushed education. So I took, I studied engineering, so that's what I ended up doing. And I said, I would hope to see you again. I hope to see you in Norway.
I hope so too. I want to travel all over.
And I'm totally honest, I'd love to show you around. I'm proud of my country too. Norway is a beautiful place. And so, and the way I've been received here, I'd love to be able to also receive you in Norway.
Oh, okay.
So,
No
thank you very much.
Okay.
Because it's way beyond what I could have dreamt or imagined. It's like, I just thought, okay, I'll see the place, but not to know that, hey, you guys, I'm happy to see that you guys live in this apartment, that you're the family that lives here. That makes me very happy.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Oh.
It was nice seeing you guys.
Right. So it's interesting because not only did we have the main entrance, but we had a door here to the bedroom in the front. I said that was my sister's bedroom. Well, my sister was 9 years older than I was, so she was 14. So she could sneak out without my parents noticing. And she did sneak out. And she was the wild one. I was the good kid who never did anything wrong. So that's why it was interesting. I see now they blocked off this door. So that was, again, my sister's bedroom.